Ladies and gentlemen, please find your seats. In a moment, the pallbearers are going to bring the Aron, the casket of Viva inside. When the Aron is brought in, we all rise. There are pamphlets coming around with some of the psalms that we'll be saying. You could fold them in half and perhaps share out. I don't think there's enough. Okay. I think we're waiting. We're waiting for one of the pallbearers. Okay, so then if you'll follow Eliezer, please. Follow Eliezer. Okay. Please rise. You may be seated. Oh, first Mechila, then Kriya. Not yet. Not yet. So do you have it? The funeral in Jewish tradition is an integral part of the soul's journey on this earth. is when the cycle of life, which begins at birth, now ends. As it says, we are created from earth and we return to earth. Right now, the soul of Viva, of blessed memory, is here with us, and we are here accompanying her on her final journey. Her presence is in this room, and at this point, when life comes to an end, we realize and put into focus what is important and what is not. And if there may have been any disagreements between anyone in this room and Viva, any grudges that are still harbored, at this time, we approach the casket and we grant forgiveness. And we also ask for forgiveness if any one of us has done perhaps something which could have caused her to bear a grudge. This way, she will be able to enter the heavenly court with a clean slate. So at this point, we ask the family members to please approach, followed by acquaintances to ask forgiveness. You approach the casket and it's a personal moment. Judaism encourages and actually requires a visible show of mourning, that we express our pain, we express how we're feeling, so much so that we do so even in our clothing, that the mourners actually tear their clothing. There's a very powerful symbolism here as well. What we are tearing is our outer clothing, symbolizing that an external connection, an external experience we're no longer able to tap into, but the internal connection that we have will always be there. We continue with reciting Psalms. You have in the pamphlets distributed on page 1, the Psalm of King David saying, as he was in the meadows and he's walking in the valley of the shadow of death, he says, I fear no evil because you are with me. We'll sing it together in the well-known tone. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai Ro'ilo echsar, V'inos deshe yar b'tzeini, Amei menuchos yinahaleini, Nafshi yeshoyevev, Yanecheni, B'mahaglei tzedek, Leman shemayim. Gam ki yelech v'geit salam haves la yirara ki yata imadi shivtecha mishantecha shulchan neged tzayverai yihi shanta vashem and raishi kahisi revaya ach toiv toiva chesed yerdefuni kol yemei chayai veshavti beveis Adonai leyayrech yamim. The Talmud tells us something extraordinary. The Talmud says anyone who mourns the passing of a good person is forgiven for all their sins. The question is why? It seems like an easy way out. How does coming to a funeral bring forgiveness? And the reason is because when we stand in a moment like this, something happens inside of us. We're not here mourning simply the loss of accomplishments or prestige or status. We're mourning a neshama. We're mourning a soul. And when a person cries for a soul, not for success, not for power, it means that something has shifted. For a moment, the noise falls away, and we remember what truly matters. Not money, not headlines, not reputation, but goodness, kindness, and faith and love. And when we realign with that, that is teshuvah, that's clarity, that awakening, that return to faith. And that's why there is forgiveness. Job said, Hashem nasan v'Hashem lakach. God gives and God takes. And today we mourn the taking of what God gave. And what he gave was not a resume, it wasn't accomplishments, it was a soul. And that's the essence of mourning. Not for what someone did, but for who they are, because in the end, that's what defines us, our goodness. And although I never merited to meet Viva in her lifetime, I know her children, I know some of her grandchildren, and I could already see from her offspring that she was the embodiment of this goodness of the neshama, of the soul. And this is what lives on forever. I once heard someone say that the greatest form of nachas, you know what nachas means? Not sure if there's a good English word to translate it to, of a joy, of contentment, is when one sees their children and their grandchildren and sees their own values reflected back in them. Their heart, their beliefs, their principles, living in the next generation, and knowing Laura, and now meeting Raymond, and the children who some I met before, some I'm meeting now. This beautiful family that she brought into this world, I think it's safe to say, I think we could say with certainty, that Viva had this nachas. In Tehillim, in Psalms, it says, Dor ledor yishabach ma'asecha. That from generation to generation, we pass it on. And life brings changes. There's war, there's struggles, social upheaval, economic shifts, which from learning about Viva, I believe she experienced all of those from her birth in 1930s in Lithuania, moving to Rhodesia with economic upheavals and other upheavals, moving to South Africa, and finally joining Laura here in Vancouver. Everything around us changes. But when our values, our morals, and our faith remains intact, and that continues on through one's children, that's success. That's eternal. And Viva had that. The beautiful family that she and Norman built, their children and her grandchildren, their grandchildren. That's a true legacy. There's a concept in Torah that a child can bring merit to a parent even after their passing. When a child does something for their parent, it brings merit to them in the heavenly court. Why? It doesn't work that way in secular courts, right? You have someone who is in court for something, but the kids, he's on trial, not his kids. But it says that no, for a parent, what their child does matters. The reason is because everything a child is rooted in what the parent gave them. So every opportunity, every act, every mitzvah, every act of kindness is in some way the fruit of what they received from their parents in love and strength and guidance. So when Viva's children and grandchildren, please God one day, great-grandchildren, live with kindness, with Jewish pride, that merit goes straight to her. And that is her eternal reward. And this is why we say about our forefather Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, that Yaakov lo meis. It says that Jacob never died. What does that mean? He's buried in Hebron. We have this whole story in the Torah saying about how he passed on. The Talmud says, just as his children are alive, he is alive. When a person leaves behind children who carry the torch, they're still alive. And so too with Viva. She lives on. She lives on through her family, through her friends, through the people whose lives were touched by her warmth and presence. And as I said before, I did not merit to meet Viva in her lifetime. But what I've heard paints a vivid picture of who she was. That she's someone who lived her life fully. That you didn't just meet her, but you felt her. People took an immediate liking to her. And not only did they love her, but they felt how much she loved them. Her highest priority was always the safety, the well-being, and the happiness of her family. She was a gentle, kind, sweet, generous, and gracious, loving person. She will be deeply missed by everyone who met her, even briefly, because she left this immediate and positive impression on those around her. The Torah says, "V'hachai yitain el libo." That means the living must take to heart. We walk away from a moment like this, not only with sadness, but with clarity. Funerals remind us of what truly matters. It's not money, it's not headlines, it's not status, it's the people. It's our legacy. It's goodness. It's love. And so I want to suggest that in Viva's merit, when we leave here today, we shall leave with a deeper dedication to what matters, to increase in kindness, to strengthen our friendships, to cherish our family and our faith, and to ensure that her legacy continues, not only in memory but in action. May her soul, Viva, Bas, Dave, Beryl, and what was her mother's name? And Basara. May her neshama have the highest aliyah. May her family be comforted amongst the mourners of Zion. And may her light continue to shine through all of us. Yehi zechra baruch, may her memory be for a blessing. Now I want to call up Raymond to speak about his mother on behalf of the family.
Thanks everybody for coming today. From Laura, myself, and the whole family. I wrote a speech, so I have to put on my reading glasses because I'm at a particular age where that's necessary. It's been a long few days and many people locally and from around the world on WhatsApp, emails. Could I get a glass of water, please? Texts, and have called and said wonderful things about my mother. And that made me sadder and made me cry. I was wondering if anybody here has something nasty to say about her so I can feel better about myself. My beautiful mother was a product of her generation. She lived a long life and passed at 95 with a frail body but a sharp, sharp mind. The rabbi told you where she was born, but he didn't know that she lived in a place with a sister called Inyazura in what was southern Rhodesia. They grew tobacco there. She went to boarding school in Salisbury or Harare during the war. She actually never spoke of that period. But she did grow up and have a dislike of rice, because apparently they served rice mixed with weevils in those times. She talked fondly of marrying my late father in the 50s and living what we call a colonial lifestyle. She had 3 children, and we became the focus of everything she did. We grew up in a wonderful bubble created by our parents, education and sports, but always education. I'm 66 years old now. And every birthday, she would wish me good health and good results. I never had the heart to tell her I haven't written an exam for 40 years. She did the same thing for all her children and her grandchildren, whom she loved dearly. They all grew up smart and thoughtful adults. A reflection, obviously, possibly on their parents, but absolutely on their grandparents, and especially their grandmother, who eventually became knowingly loved not as Viva, but as Granny Viva. Everybody called her Granny Viva. Over a lifetime, she lived in a few places and was always driven by moves for opportunities for her kids, both socially and educationally. But she never, ever, ever complained and only ever wanted to help her family and others. My mother was an extraordinary woman, but it was not always easy for her. Within a span of 2 years, some 26 years ago, she lost her husband, my dad, and her oldest son, my brother. 26, and that was in January. So January was always a hard month for her. And 26 years alone is also a long time. I live in California, but I was lucky enough to marry my wife, Abby, who's an extraordinary woman, and into her extended family. Well, Granny Viva had 6 grandchildren. Abby's folks had 12 grandchildren. So when Granny Viva used to come visit us, she always attended all the dinners and activities. It is a testament to her that all 12 of those kids sent outpourings of love and respect. Maybe one of my favorites was she was a special lady, and it made me feel lucky to grow up with an extra granny. And that's a wonderful sentiment. I have been asked repeatedly by a lot of people what were her secrets in reaching her impressive age. I can categorically say it was not her diet. Cottage cheese, processed meat and sausages, hot black tea. So for any of you who are going to have a green salad today with 1 portion of protein, don't. She also only exercised in moderation. Gentle long walks, but only in places she knew, because she had no sense of direction. What she did do in excess was keep her mind busy playing bridge in person before COVID, and then online. She was always clicking away. She was, however, a terrible bridge coach, or I was a terrible student. I'm not sure which. I think it may be the latter. I believe she was so sharp and experienced she could play with the best. She told me, it's always about playing the game and the score, but maybe it's about the score. I love that. We will miss my mother. Her friends will miss her. She was always kind to everyone. She was active. She was engaged. A generation has now passed, and we are left with a hole in our hearts. Thank you again for being here, my sister.
Thank you, everybody, for coming here. Can you hear? Thank you, everyone, for making this special trip all the way out here. See the sun shining for my mother. We took her out at UBC Hospital a couple of days ago. The sun was shining for her then as well. So I believe she really is here with us today. We read this morning, "May only goodness and kindness pursue us." In all honesty, I must tell you that my mother epitomized goodness and kindness all the days of her life. She had three qualities which I'd like to expound upon, which absolutely typified my mother, and she had them in enormous quantities. The first was her warmth and friendliness. She greeted everybody with a warm smile and twinkling eyes and intense listening to what they had to say. So people left my mother's presence feeling heard and feeling loved and feeling special. And that quality, friends of mine who met her 40 years ago and haven't seen her in the last 40 years, tell me how special she made them feel, and they've never forgot it. The other quality that my mother aimed for was peaceful social coexistence. She never wanted anybody to argue. She wanted peace and calm, and if there was any ripple in her social interaction, she would say, "All that matters is that you're healthy. Nothing else matters." So there was no conflict in her life. She was just a calm and beautiful woman who believed in gentleness and generosity and selflessness. So, for example, she didn't want to put anybody out on her account. Until recently, her mobility was hampered. She didn't want to call anybody to give her a ride from the Weinberg to the JCC, which is about 500 meters, lest she put anybody out. So this typified my mother, who was always thinking of other people, never wanting to inconvenience anybody. She was the quiet, dignified presence in the room, never arguing, never voicing a contrary opinion, but listening respectfully. As an example of her generosity, we would go to her hospital room where she was sitting in a wheelchair, not able to do very much. And she would say, "Please, have some water, have some crackers." She wanted to feed us. She wanted to make sure that we were comfortable. I would go there and sit on a perch above the bed, and she would say, "Please, get a chair, get a chair, get a chair." She couldn't bear the thought of anybody being uncomfortable. So in conclusion, I wish to paint for you a picture of a woman who was loving and gentle and wished for peace and harmony, and she will be greatly missed by us all. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. In the months, the last few months of my grandmother's life, we spent a lot of time in the hospital. I spent a lot of time in the hospital with her, hours and hours talking about whatever she felt like speaking about. This was maybe well known to everyone, but I tried to speak to her about music, about art. She always said she had no ear for music, and so that topic died at that sentence. Very poor choice of words, my apologies. This is unscripted. And art, she also said she had no eye for art, so that conversation wouldn't go anywhere. And one day I tried to bring up poetry as well, and she said there's one poem, she likes one poem with a line she remembers, which was, "I wandered lonely as a cloud" by William Wordsworth. It's a beautiful poem. I won't say the whole thing to you, but you know, sorry. It is a beautiful poem painting a picture about a host of golden daffodils on the bank, blowing in the breeze on the bank of a river. It's really wonderful. But the last stanza is something that I think is very pertinent to her life, and maybe is the reason she liked the poem so much. And it was something like, "For oft, when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon my inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And, sorry, apologies. And then my heart with pleasure fills, and then my heart with pleasure fills, and dances with the daffodils." And as Raymond said, she outlived her husband by nearly 3 decades, 2.5 decades, which is very difficult to deal with. And she went through a difficulty no parent should ever have to deal with, the outliving her son as well. And it's a testament to her incredible strength that throughout my entire childhood, not once did she ever speak negatively of it. She never brought it up. She never even showed a single sign of grief. And one day I was probably 8 or 9 years old and misbehaving terribly, as I did at that age. And it was just her and I, and the strength fell. I drained the strength of her in that moment, and it fell through, and I saw all the grief she had to deal with at that time. And again, it's a testament to her strength. That was the one time I ever saw that strength fall. And I firmly believe that it's not being loved that gives us strength. It is the act of loving others. And I know that all that strength that came from her is because she loved her family and friends so much. Everyone here she loved very, I'm sorry, I can't say anymore. She loved everyone very deeply. That was her defining characteristic.
Thank you for those beautiful words. Viva has a special merit. Today is a day, it's Rosh Chodesh Adar, the beginning of the month of Adar, which Jewish tradition says, Mishenichnas Adar, when Adar comes in, we add in joy. And I think from what I heard up until now, it's surely an expression of the joy and zest that she had in life. Therefore, in the services, there's different parts that are usually said where we request mercy or we kind of express certain affirmation of God's judgment. We don't say those today because the day itself does it as well. There's usually 7 stops that we do to ward off a ruach ra, negative energy. Today, it's unnecessary because we're on this joyous and powerful day, which coincides with Viva's coming up to heaven, coming up to Shemayim. And although she will be missed by many, it also feels like there are people which are rejoicing to meet her up there. And in a moment, we're going to accompany Viva on her final journey. It says, in this state, the soul is in limbo from after passing until burial. So to this final journey of Afar Tasha, which return to the earth, where she will find peace. So we're going to walk behind the hearse, behind the coffin. And as we go, we'll say there are certain chapters of Psalms that's in the booklet. It's Psalm 91. And now, if the pallbearers could please come up. For those which need, there is a golf cart that will make its way to the burial place.